Hi folks, welcome to Scholar About Tarot. Just call me Mayfield. Tag, I'm it. B from Akali Sunflower actually tagged me to do a video response to a hashtag called MyFirstTarotKickstarterDeck. This tag was started by Elaine from Tatts and Tea, and it's a pretty short tag actually, so yeah, I'm super down. The tag is also pretty self-explanatory, so we're just gonna get started with the first prompt. So, what is my first Kickstarter tarot deck? Mine is actually the Tarot Bot by Michael Murdoch. The reason that I backed this deck was because at the time I was super into robots. I mean, look at my channel name, ScholarBot Tarot, duh. And I was also like actively searching for robot tarot decks. And I was kind of coming up pretty short. I did find two that sort of matched my description. I had found the Tarocchi di Robanza, or however that's pronounced, this really old like Italian deck that had just really weird suits. And then there was also the Hexen 2.0, which was more of a cybernetic tarot deck. Of course, at that point when I did find it, it was out of print, but I was able to snag a copy of the guidebook. Is a generous description of what it is. It was basically an art book. So yes, I just really like robots, the history, and just the cultural conversations that you can have surrounding the way that we think about robots and the way that we interact with what is to be robots, whether it be AI or digital tools or anything like that. So so yes, I like robots. And I had found those two other texts before this thickums arrived. Do I still use the deck? Absolutely. This is one of my hidden favorites, and what I mean by that is this is one of those decks where I sort of forget that I have it in my collection, and so I'll just rediscover it every few months. And when I rediscover it, I find myself getting a lot of play out of it. So it's the type of deck that I like to hold because of how glossy it is. Again, normally I don't like very glossy decks, but I find myself enjoying the feel of this deck. And I do use it like a few times for readings for myself. Maybe a few times every time I do rediscover it. It's such a weird relationship that I have with this deck and a couple others that I have that habit with, but yes, the short answer is I totally use this deck still. So I'm going to share with you a little bit about the deck. That's basically the final prompt. There's not really much to say because it is an RWS deck, but as for card specs, it is standard size as far as I can tell. It's borderless with golden edges and gold foil on the backs. It's incredibly glossy, but shockingly that doesn't bother me. I would imagine that it would have, but it's actually really pleasing to hold and to look at when the lighting is right. If you're a modern gamer, the first thing that I think of whenever I see this deck is Borderlands, which is like a first-person shooter, but it definitely matches the arid and emptiness of the background. Sometimes in some of the cards, it almost looks and feels like there's trash left behind. Now that I'm looking at the cards again, I don't really see too much of that, but anytime I think of this deck, like when I was writing a brief script for this deck, I was thinking like, I feel like I could just see the trash that's left behind in a previously human world. And there are like a couple of bonus cards, like this is the Con Man. There's also the Anarchist, and here, oh no, this is the Hermit, but I think the Elder is like another bonus card. The backgrounds and, I mean, the colors are quite bright, and yet it still feels like barren and kind of empty. or at least that's what the atmosphere feels like. It's like empty and gritty. Many of the robots are pretty, like thin or bulky to the point where, you know what, maybe that was honestly where I was getting like that trash can feeling. They kind of look like something that you would have found in the garbage. So I guess another pop culture reference that I am thinking of is like the DreamWorks movie. I think it's DreamWorks Robots. If anyone's familiar with that, like that's what a lot of these robots kind of look like, the robots from that film. And despite how, like, you can't really see very much of their facial features, and yet the way that the characters or the robots here are drawn, they seem very animated. And that animation is plenty enough to be able to take, or at least process, the kind of emotions that you're supposed to get from some of these cards. So the way the bots themselves are like positioned, you get a lot of what you're supposed to be getting from each card. And since it is technically, as I said earlier, it is an RWS clone, it doesn't take very much to be able to have a good reading from it. It's not too difficult to fill in the blanks for what we're meant to feel when we pull a card. So unfortunately, this edition is out of print. However, you can still purchase the black edition, which has a 2-piece box as opposed to the tuck box that you saw. It also comes in basically black. I mean, it's the black edition. It comes with black borders, black edging, and black backs. In addition to just those kinds of specs, I will say that it also comes with 16 bonus cards. So it's basically like a little mini oracle. I personally find that I reach for the first edition more often, just because I prefer this particular deck without borders. But if you like a bordered edition with bonus cards, it is still available for purchase. Okay, so what did I learn from this tag? I sincerely didn't think that this was the first deck that I backed on Kickstarter. When I was watching B's video on this tag, I immediately thought that it was the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot, because with the Fyodor Pavlov Tarot, I was waiting for it to be launched on Kickstarter. I had seen art for it maybe 6 months before I was informed that the Kickstarter was available, and so because of that excitement and how much I use that deck, I was thinking, oh, totally, it's the Fyodor Pavlov deck. Let me go ahead and make a video on that. But then I looked at my Kickstarter history, and it was actually the Tarot bot, and I'm like, oh, that's so sad that I forgot about this deck. So yes, now that I'm in that moment where I could have definitely rediscovered this deck, I will find myself using this for for the next like week or so, and then it will probably go onto my shelf, and I'll forget about it again, and then the magic happens all over again. So you know what, win-win for everybody. I do highly recommend this deck. It is very fun to use. I'm sorry that the first edition is no longer available, but at least the second edition is available for now. So yes, I learned the power of reinvigorating the magic with the first deck that I backed on Kickstarter. So yes, I'm very grateful as well that it was such a positive experience. Not only did I back a copy of this deck, I ordered 2 additional copies when it was available on Etsy, when Michael Murdoch had his store open on Etsy. And I gifted both of those copies. I actually gifted the original copy that was sent to me because it was in the best condition. You will hear this again in my, when I clear out my purgatory box, when I talk about this deck. Oh no. But as wonderful as the fulfillment process was, there were tarot decks there were copies that were a little damaged. Like the one that I have was a damaged copy that I purchased on Etsy, where like 2 of the cards were a little chewed up. And for the black edition, if you end up ordering the black edition, just a fair warning, the cards are like so stuck together that there might be a little bit of tearing. However, it's a very easy fix. What I did is I would run each card through with like a Sharpie, and it was honestly a great bonding experience because I at least was able to play around with the deck and see if it was something that I would use. But again, I prefer the first edition a little bit more because the gold is baller and I just prefer this deck as borderless. Thank you to Elaine for starting this tag, and thank you so much to B from Akali Sunflower for tagging me in this. I really appreciate it, and I just love attention, so I'm always happy to provide, and please. But yes, thank you so much for tagging me, B. I appreciate it, and it was great watching your video as well, and I'm looking forward to watching other tags on this, because it's super interesting to see like where we first started on crowdfunding, since crowdfunding has been so prevalent, particularly during the quarantine times. And I'm excited to see what other people's experiences was and still is with their first backed tarot deck. So thanks so much for joining me, and leave a like, or if you don't have a channel and aren't interested in recording anything, I'd love to hear what your first back deck was and if you still use it. So until next time, folks, I'll catch you later.